Well, I got my Dunkin' this morning.
I don't know what the homemade brew was that Kim made, but she poured it in and she sent me out the door, man.
She's pretty good at coffee.
Yeah, she's really good at coffee because she's really picky.
Uh-huh.
Really, really high maintenance when it comes to coffee.
Yeah.
She will not do certain coffees. But man, hey, I'm the benefactor, I guess.
You're like, if it looks dark and watery, it's probably coffee. I'll drink it.
Here's the difference between Kim and I. You know, when you're at a gas station, those old time glass coffee making kind of like
with either
pitchers,
like the black top or the orange top if it's decaf.
And I asked the people, well, how long has that been on there? And they're like, all day. I'm like, I'll take it. And she'll be like walking out. Oh well. Oh well.
Yeah, I'd probably land in somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, maybe.
Somewhere in the middle.
Because you don't mind Dunkin'. I think Dunkin's great coffee. But
good.
you also, I see you at the coffee shops a lot, like the good coffee shops. I see you at those a lot.
I appreciate good coffee.
Yeah.
But I'm not above the fast food coffee either.
But this is a secret that I'll tell on for everybody. That in a pinch, Kim will go to McDonald's because they actually have a good brew there.
It's decent.
Yeah,
well, I know bad. Sometimes you do sermon prep at McDonald's.
Sometimes I hide there, man. I'm just like, I gotta get all the coffee and food or whatever, man. It's just
we're gonna have everybody
good place to hide.
Trying to find the other thing is there's so many of them, so we can say you do sermon prep at McDonald's. Nobody's gonna know which one.
True, man.
Nobody will find you.
I could be in Morgantown for all you know, right? It's like,
yep.
No, that's all good. It's all good. Man, it's been a couple weeks. It feels like it too. It feels like, wow, this has been a long time since we've sat here and talked about some good things out of the Word, you know?
Yep. We are still in the series on Solomon, which is good.
Yeah, 8 lessons, 8 life lessons on the wisdom and folly of Solomon.
Yep.
And the last couple weeks has been more...
We've taken a turn
the folly.
Towards the folly, for sure. Yeah, he was...
Yeah, no, for sure.
We were learning a lot of the wisdom, and there's still wisdom to be found in his folly.
Well, that's for sure.
But, yeah, we definitely saw it fall apart a little bit last week, because we weren't able to sit at the table last week. So, that message, we basically saw Solomon do everything the complete opposite of what he was supposed to do.
It is amazing.
It's wild.
When we compared the scriptures up on the screen of like, okay, don't go to Egypt and buy a horse. Okay, that's the simplest command that I think,
specific.
Because I think I can obey that.
Yep.
Can you obey that command? I can obey that command. I'm not going to go to Egypt and buy a horse. Okay, he goes to Egypt and buys many, many horses.
Yep.
Visits Egypt, buys chariots from Egypt.
Yep.
Marries somebody from Egypt, and I'm thinking to myself,
yeah,
what happened?
Yeah,
you know what happened? You know.
Well, one of the things in the in the rules for kings, like that God laid out when Israel demanded a king, God said, okay, well, here's what they need to do. One of the things on that list was they need to read the law every day. Like,
yes,
I think we see Solomon may have neglected that part.
And that was way back in Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do.
Yep.
Read the law.
It's still what we need to do.
That
right?
is so true.
Which is crazy.
For all of us.
Yeah.
For you and for me, especially for me, it's like, man, I need to be in the Word. And when I'm not, I can really tell that I'm not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet, it was one of those things that I know how routines get out of routine.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, not
so
today.
Fast.
It happens so fast.
Yeah, you skip one day of say I'm like, all right, I'm going to walk the dogs every day. We're going to go. This is our route. Miss one day because it rained, right? Then the next day I'm like, I'm still kind of tired because it was raining yesterday. I'll go tomorrow. And then tomorrow there's an excuse. And the next day there's an excuse.
True.
It's like...
It's really true how easy and quickly we can get... You know how I see it sometimes? And I'll be honest with you, this happens more in this way in the conversations that I have is church. Like somebody will miss church one week.
Yep.
You know what? We went to a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
Fine. But then the second week, I got some things I got to do. Third week.
Because I was gone last weekend.
I was gone last weekend, so now I got to catch up.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Third week, maybe I'll just watch online. Maybe fourth week, all of a sudden you're completely out of sync and out of routine, and it becomes so easy to miss. And that's a routine that's helpful for us. It's to be among other people and just get mutually encouraged while we're together, man. You know, and so I just think that
we talked about that this week with the bonfire analogy that you used of like you get away from being together with other believers and all of a sudden you're not feeling the warmth anymore. and you were talking about with like being close to the Lord.
Exactly, but the same analogy works that way when we're like not in that place of mutual encouragement. We back away from that. It's like it's there, and it's really good for us. And I think that Solomon just left the word, he left the principles, and then he started saying to himself one of the most dangerous statements that we can ever say to ourselves. You know what? It's no big deal. Yeah, not really a big deal. If I marry this lady from Egypt, you know, she'll come around. If I buy these horses, really? Do I really shouldn't buy horses? And yet the Lord gave a reason why we shouldn't buy horses from Egypt, or why he shouldn't. Yeah. I think I can if I needed to. But I'm saying that he was specifically told not to. Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that it always strikes me, the thing about like the marriage, because that one feels weird. It's like, wait, what? Like, why can't you go marry like an Egyptian woman? What's wrong with them? It wasn't that she was Egyptian. It's that the Egyptians had all of these gods that were not God. And so God knew that worship of him would be tainted if you marry. And it's like, it's so important not to compromise on the things that God has said, even when they don't seem like they make sense to us. Because it probably just didn't make sense. He was like, well, what's the big deal? I know who God is. I'm going to keep worshiping God. Well, we saw him pretty quickly. There's shrines set up to all of the different little gods that are connected to all the wives. That's what's so crazy. And when you see the end of his life and see that he married all these wives from all these different places, the reason God told him not to marry foreign wives was because you're going to end up starting to worship their gods. And Solomon's like, come on, man, that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen to me. And it happened to him. And then he's offering sacrifices to Molech and Shamash and the worst of the worst false gods that require human sacrifice and crazy things like that. And yet he's worshiping them and allowing them to do that and allowing them to build shrines to those false gods. Can you imagine if there was a way for us to imagine the heart of God when he saw that happen? I just think it broke his heart. It's over and over that it did break his heart. But I'm saying what that must have felt like is, I don't know. And God's not like a snarky, I told you so kind of God. But like, I'm sure he's sitting and watching this unfold and he's just like, oh man, this is why I told you all of these things. It wasn't because I just didn't want you to have fun. It wasn't because I just didn't want you to enjoy your life. It was because I knew that you'd find yourself sitting down to write Ecclesiastes at the end of your life and saying, everything is vanity. Everything is meaningless, you know? How did I get here into this place? Is anything worth it in this life at this point? I mean, he downplayed everything. Then he led to downfall. That's when the kingdom split. If anybody is aware of Israel and the whole Jewish history of the kingdom splitting, that was when it happened. Can you imagine making a mistake so big that entire kingdom fell apart because of it? And there's Ecclesiastes. Yikes. He's like, how did this happen? I'm looking at everything under the sun, and now he had written Ecclesiastes, he was moved pretty far away from God. Yeah. And God was still allowing him to write that book so that we gain perspective. You know, I had some people talk to me after the message this past Sunday, and I said, you know what that message was? It was a perspective message. Yeah. It gives us a perspective on the things in life that are important. Yeah. And here's somebody who was able to try every single pleasure and make life work on his own terms because he had the money to do it and the wherewithal to do it and the power, and nothing worked. Yeah. Nothing helped. Yep. He was still miserable. He said in chapter 7, he also said other places, I hate my life. Like, what? Dude, you have everything. No, you don't. Right. Yeah. You have everything but nothing. It's weird. It's, you know, and then all those cheap substitutes that God allowed him to put in his life to realize that God is the only one that can fill us in that most important place. Yep. And like you said about the bonfire illustration, it's like the bonfire's there. The heat's going to be there. Yep. The warmth and the light, it's there. It's not moving. Yeah. You can move, and that's what happened to him. And yet, even in the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, as we'll get to this week, God remains faithful to show light, to say, look, I'm still here. And if you want to come back, come back. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
When I think, I'm sure it's not easy as a pastor to have to stand up in front of everybody and say, without God, your life is meaningless. Mm-hmm. That's an intense thing to have to say. Yeah. So, I appreciate your willingness to say that. Because it's hard. I'm sure you didn't wake up on Sunday morning like, I'm so excited to go up there and tell everybody.
Certain Sundays and certain messages, man, fall in the category of, okay, all right, man.
This is a tough one.
Go. This is going to be tough for some people to swallow. You know?
But it's important because I think those are the statements that can shake us out of that.
It's a really good point.
Meaninglessness. Mm-hmm. We've talked before, I forget what series it was, we talked about something has to come in and interrupt the cycle, right? When we start going into this sin cycle or getting away from the Lord, something has to interrupt it. And sometimes it's that just firm statement of, you are heading towards meaninglessness. Yeah. And we're like, oh.
That's a really, really good way to say that. That if we don't get that interruption, and sometimes we think something really as bad is happening to us, and we go through this trial, and yet it's God doing that work of interrupting this cycle that either we're about to get into that we didn't know we were going to get into, or that we're in, and it's His grace. Yeah. He's like, man, I want you to understand the most important thing, you know? And so the whole idea of that word meaningless is that word breath. It's just, it's here for a second and it's gone, you know? So if there's not ultimate meaning, if this is all there is, then we're going to live like that. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, man, this is all there is, you know, and it's not going so well. If we believe that there's more for us and more that God has for us, both in this life and in eternity, we're going to live like that. There's going to be like, okay, God, then I'm going to follow you in this. I'm going to, you know, adhere to what you tell me to do and experience the joy and the power that goes along with that. And then there's going to be meaning in life because it's ultimately to serve God, and God has this whole thing together, and we're part of His story. And it's like we have a purpose. There's a plan for us. Mm-hmm. There's going to be great things ahead for us. Yeah, all that's right there.
Funny because I was just having a conversation with a friend recently of like, you know, there's a lot of hard stuff going on. Imagine if we didn't know that God is on the throne, right? Because that's what happened with Solomon. He'd gotten so far away from his strong convictions that God is God and the only thing worth our worship and focus. And he'd fallen into this place of everything's meaningless. Mm-hmm. When we don't remember and focus and know confidently inside of ourselves that God is on the throne and the things that are happening around us will be used for our good because we love Him and are called according to His purpose, right? As Romans 8:28.
There's hope in that. Oh my gosh.
There's so much hope in that. And like when somebody's not a believer and they're going through stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you even getting out of bed in the morning? Yeah. Because it doesn't make sense outside of there's a God who loves us and who is working all of the things together.
And we so badly hope that those people who, like you just mentioned, who don't know God yet are going through these hard things will say, okay, I've got to turn at some point. You know, you hear that saying that when you're at rock bottom, the only place to look is up. When you're at the very bottom, okay, that's what God is after, you know. And I think that's what even he was trying to do with Solomon. Solomon was in this really desperate place. Mm-hmm. He was depressed. He was, you know, and God's yet saying, I'm here. Yeah. And we'll get to a little bit of that, like I said, this week in this week's sermon. But just as a sneak preview, man, when we live a life of simple faith, it's really valuable. Yeah. It's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like, man, it doesn't have to be all that complicated, you know, and we could live in this joy and power that God wants for us.
Right.
You know?
Right. Which is a really cool thing.
So, I mean, when you go from saying, oh, no big deal, to how did I get here, to, man, life is all just worthless. It's a bad place.
Yep.
And yet God is like, I have the remedy for that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I knew you were going to get there. And I sent my son as the remedy, as the way for you to get back to me.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
So that while you're there, you have a picture that is so clear of the fact that I've been restoring this relationship the whole time.
Exactly.
You know, like he's been restoring us and our ability to be with him. I mean, it happened once and for all in Christ, but continues to draw us to himself every day with the warmth of that giant bonfire.
There you go. That's great.
In your negative 14 degree days.
I love it. Love it, man.
You're crazy.
A bonfire when it's minus 14.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that likes to walk away. You know, but that kind of wrecks the illustration, man. Wrecks the
don't
analogy.
tell them that.
So, oh, man. Love it. So, anyway, good.
All right.
Good.
Well,
one more week. One more week of Solomon. And then we're into Holy Week, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Early Easter.
That's right.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Have a great week.
Have a great week, everybody.